Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another session from the Wise Asylum. Interesting week. The Liverpool horror. Ooh, that was not good at all. You know, the trouble with things like that is you have to be very careful in that most people start to scream that there's no victims. Well, clearly there were some casualties in this situation, as there are in most of these operations, but the way these operations work, they tend to apportion the blame somewhere else, and that isn't correct. So there are major anomalies in the police briefings as to what we are to believe went down, and of course you look at the BBC and they're telling you it's the Liverpool fans. So we'll have a little look at that because there are major anomalies in the story. But nobody or nothing we're going to do this evening will take away from the fact there are casualties in this event. I just think it's fair, when these events take place, that the blame is put squarely at the feet of the perpetrators and not, as they tend to get away with, throwing it over there. So that we'll have a look at. We've also got a great piece from a retired judge who spilled beans, basically, on his retirement and basically give us the game as to what's actually going on. Now, as a follow-on from last week's data, which I'll remind you, is basically what it's saying now, where we're at with this shenanigans that's gone on for, well, since 1933, and perhaps formed before, but specifically from 1933 and the bankruptcy declarations when we became the credit for the fiat currency. And last week, in that data, the basic structure of what you have to take from it is the fact that when you're born, you have the ability within 30 days to register that event in your own jurisdiction and put that into the state. However, that's not what happens. Father, in usual case, goes off and then conjoins or incorporates your given name with his surname, which pulls in the deceased estate assigned to the placenta. So we know this. Now, the data that we looked at last week is very clear in once that's achieved, the state has created its own trust based on your equity in, you might say, in your dominion rights, to which you are the beneficiary. And this is why they say, oh, we set it up for you, but you don't come to claim it. So once they've set that system up, the Crown is the beneficial owner. Now, as we looked last week, the beneficial owner is the taxable entity. However, it plays clever, because no sooner has Father conjoined the two, the state's involved. Now, the state in the trust situation becomes the trust corporation, and that then shields the beneficial owner, so that the beneficial owner, the Crown, isn't liable for all the nonsense that they're going to throw at it from the day you're born till the day you die. And that you coming in then under that trust system that they own, or said to be coming in claiming something that you don't own, either as a trustee or indeed trying to be an executor. And from that point on, you've basically executed yourself and away they go. And so there's two shields then away from the beneficial owner. So that is sort of the platform and point of reference. And I thought it'd be interesting to go through this judge's bean spilling, because we can look for the terms now that he uses, and if we use that foundation that we looked at last week as our point of reference entirely in this stuff that we're going to look at, and I've only read a bit of it, I've not read it all, so I'm coming to it cold as well. I just think if we use that now, the basis of our foundation of what's gone on, then we can look to these new terms, how he presents it, and reference it in accordance with that. So I thought we'd do that tonight. But obviously, there's been this Liverpool thing. And also, I suppose we'll run with this now, but Well, 4 weeks ago, I did put out the fact that Tommy Robinson had an account on my Facebook, taking great interest. And then on the April the 30th, I presented some stuff, thinking, like, okay, I'll show you what you're missing. And then David Rothschild came on, and Tommy Robinson's account was no more. Now, he has done an interview with Rebel News, Ezra Levant, or whatever he's called. And in all truth, it was very, very telling indeed. First red flag and first point of note is Tommy was clearly off his tits on cocaine. You could see anybody that knows that stuff. He was clearly high as a kite on cocaine, which, if you have to do that to be interviewed, well, you're not comfortable in what you're actually doing, would be my opinion. So that was the first red flag, let's say. Secondly, what I thought was rather surprising is that his main thrust of his entire narrative was aimed at the judiciary. And as we all know, as we've been dealing with this fake judiciary forever, things are not as they should be. And his entire narrative, in the main, was rebutting the judiciary. And I thought to myself, this guy is clearly way, way, way below par on understanding anything except what it is that he runs on, which is the anger he bears for this invasion. And the fact that he's clearly seen that the police and the state itself not only facilitates the bad behaviours and criminal behaviours of this invading force, it actually protects it. Now, I've said before, I don't disagree with a lot of what Tommy has discussed in relation to what he's found in state complicity with this invading force's ridiculous behaviour. So that, I agree, is fine. But as he went on and he goes on, you can see clearly, I did get the feeling that perhaps he has actually sat for 7 months in solitary confinement. It's quite possible. Just his demeanour, his attitude seemed a little bit institutionalised, and like he'd been freed all of a sudden. He was still a little bit confused, which I've seen many times in people that I know that have served quite a bit of time in prison. So that made me think perhaps he has. Then, of course, you have to reference the fact that the script played out as it did with Julian Assange, as they do these people when they're released, full beard, full hair, trying to look a little bit like Jesus. Or the picture or image that we have, and we're told this is the geezer. And again, it's all playing into this scripted, emotional canon, as they call it, to drag that emotion out of you and throw it and thrust it on him. So I could see plain as day. This is another PCI script. It's another game played by the PCIs. And poor Tommy, or Stephen, to me, because there'll be no Tommy Robinson ever put in prison, it'd be Stephen. All right, and that's another point that people need to remember. He was looking more and more to me like a seriously controlled, mind-controlled puppet. Because the amount of, let's say the scope of his studies and his research over these years, he would have come into touch with a lot of other stuff that's out there to show that actually the reason why this judicial system isn't operating as we'd expect is because it's fully controlled by the very force that he is in love with and is happy to claim allegiance to. That would be the PCI Club. And he hasn't worked that out, clearly. So it does show me that there's a lot of occult stuff being played against him in his years, and it's preventing him from seeing beyond the agenda he's been given. Now, he went into that openly, so he's not so much as a victim, he's a compliant victim. He went in there And if you want to see that, you've got to go back to BNP's Nick Griffin, who explains every single thing that happened when Tommy was actually in the BNP. So, first red flag is he were high on coke. Interestingly, he was speaking in the main about the judiciary and how ridiculous it's become. And he also pointed out that the 84 grand or 86 grand that he collected on a GoFundMe from his fans was basically handed over to his legal team, who, well, they did nothing for him, did they? So again, you look at that, and basically not only is Tommy being completely controlled by this system that is this judiciary, they're also milking the living shit out of all his followers. Because every penny you're giving to little Tommy is going then into the hands of the PCI lawyers. Because we know at that level, King's Counsel, they know entirely that the fact that you can only get incarcerated like that if you're on person. If they were really on his side and really wanted to help a guy on England trying to bring England back into being, they would have had him off in a shot. So on the one hand, I could relate to his story. I can also relate to a lot of the shit that I know he's gone through in his time because I've been through that myself. This is the kind of shit they're doing to you when they're plugging you in. Of course, I didn't let them plug me in. I fought them tooth and nail all the way to keep my freedom from them. And then, of course, you get to a point where you can actually, you've got the right frequencies around you, and it's very difficult for them to set you up. And so I'm looking at Tommy, and I can see now that he's gone through these occult initiations, and they've solidified the power and control over his mind to the point that they can actually censor it. They can imprison it in a small compartmentalised raft of knowledge, meaning no matter what he studies, it's always going to come back to the edit, which is it's I love Israel, I love the PCIs. It's nothing to do with them. They're my friends and they're not my enemy. Well, Tommy, unfortunately, everything that you discussed in that interview, everything you decried about the judiciary and the particular governor that were in there for that period of time where you were pretty stuck, is the same force that you were in love with, because it's the no-hire judges in Freemasonry that are controlling the police, they're controlling the judiciary, and ultimately the lawyers that you handed the 84 grand over to that all your friends had given you, again, serve the no-hire trust. So your job, my friend, is just to create civil unrest. And if you haven't realised that yet, take it from me. As an English lad, that's exactly what they're doing to you. And I can relate to it way, way more than you would believe. You know? And also, what else were we discussing? No, I can't think of anything else we were discussing, but that was the main thesis of everything, hitting the judiciary, but couldn't recognise that actually it's that judiciary. The fact that the system isn't working correctly is because it is now under the very system of the people that are claiming and feigning to be in support of him, when actually, if you look at it, they're just fleecing him. They're abusing him left, right and centre, but while he's getting a little bit of this, while he's getting a little bit of publicity, that's his drive. So you can see clearly he's not sounding his spiritual self, is more taken up by the perceived power he might gain, the wealth, etc. once now they've launched him and he can gather the troops. That's what I was going to say. One of the things, the two things he kept going on about and bringing up all the time, Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Well, Elon Musk and Donald Trump are the very system. They are the ones that are going to emancipate the system that you're decrying. The very system that you see as your enemy is the system that's playing you. So it was rather sad to watch that, because I could clearly see the degree to which he's now mind-controlled, and who knows what they've done to him in that 7 months. But you can guarantee it will be of a focus to this, keeping him in this compartmentalised state and then launching him out. So that would be my take on what I watched in that interview. And it did rather sadden me to a lot, because I know exactly where he's at, what he's suffering, but he hasn't got the capacity to recognise that. And as it moves forward for him now, that potential for him to recognise it will just dissipate even further. So sad indeed to actually watch that. So be careful, people out there, because he's been compartmentalised to ignorance, total ignorance. I mean, on the tree, he's way down at the bottom on his understanding of stuff. And anybody out there that follows it, and more importantly, acts upon it, you need to know that you are then being played in exactly the same way by the same force that A is the judiciary, and B, the very force that's shoving this invading force in amongst you. And so, ultimately, everything that this invading force is carrying out is under the control of the very force that put you in prison, that took your money, and then claims to be supporting you. They're supporting you, Stephen, because you're plain ignorant. You don't get the gig. You're not getting it, son, and you are just a puppet to that, like Hitler was, and all the rest of them. You know, the mind control when they target you, if they get you in, if you're not strong enough to break free of it, is so powerful and potent. It will keep hold of you for the rest of your life, because it does control your sight, and it will keep you fixed in the bubble that they insist you stay in until your time's up. And then whatever. So that'll be my caution to Thomas, and more importantly to anybody that might be following that agenda. So you watch Elon Musk now, you watch Trump, they'll all be gone to the White House and blah blah blah. You just watch. And so I will say, it's sad. It doesn't take anything away from what you've done in your life, i.e. the research, the shit you've gone through, etc. Nobody is disputing that, because we can all see ourselves. But it's the game that's being played through you and with you, because you've been, unfortunately, not strong enough to see through it. So that would be my caution to Stephen Laxley and anybody that might follow him. Now, Liverpool, God's sake, I mean... So first, before we start this, we're not going to make any statements of fact. We're just going to look at the spin that's been shoved down everybody's necks in relation to how people should understand what's just taken place in Liverpool. We are taking nothing away whatsoever from the victims and casualties of this event. In fact, if anything, it's because of those people that the spell needs to be broken, and that the blame isn't apportioned where it is these people will want it shoving, which, if you take the BBC's latest interview, is directly aimed at Liverpool football fans. I mean, they've been doing that for a long time, and Hillsborough, prime example, blaming the fans when it were clearly the police keeping them in, not allowing them to get the people off the balconies. And same with Sheffield. You know, all what? What was that all about? Well, let's look at what that were all about. Back in the day, you had millions and millions of white males, pissed as farts, roaming around the country on a Saturday. Uncontrollable. Uncontrollable. You're not going to control that situation through force. Far too many white males, up and down, pissed, looking for a bit of fun. So what do? Well, then you attack the actual system that's creating that and allowing that, and that would be the fact that there were 4 very strong football divisions, and there were absolutely hundreds of thousands of smaller clubs across the country, all playing football, okay? So the first thing you would do in order to break down the numbers would be to break down the ability of the size of the audience or capacity in the stadiums. Oh, let's make them all seated. Oh, how did they get that? Well, Hillsborough, Sheffield, they're standing up, look what happens. So straight away they halved the amount of people that could be in these football stadiums, therefore halving the amount of people that were roaming around on Saturday. Business is far uncontrollable. Then, let's make it a smaller game. We'll invent the Premiership. And to hell with every other club. Again, lessens the amount of people that can be on the street on a Saturday or any other night that there's a football game uncontrollable. And that's how they've penned the football game in over these decades. And of course, now they decided that they would capitalise on the massive energy of joy that was taking place in Liverpool as they celebrated the team's win, the Premier League, after a hell of a long break. And what better way to do that than to turn that joy into something twisted? Well, that is exactly how the occultists of the black would operate. They would want to capitalise on that energy and shift it into something dark. And that event has done that. In the main, it's took away all the joyful energy in relation to Liverpool winning the Premier League, and the whole focus now of that celebration is fixed to this twisted and dark agenda. So casualties there've been, so we'll take nothing away from that, and it's sad that there's casualties. So we will look at the script, because they want it apportioned to football supporters, when in fact, if we look at the system and look at the data, that's not what is coming through. And let's now use what these judicial PCIs use, which is balance of probability. That's their game in the civil. Utter shit and garbage, but they accept it and they have it. So on the balance of probability, ladies and gentlemen, let's just dip our little toes into the script as we are supposed to accept it as it comes out from the orifice of the PCI club. Now, so we'll start with this video actually, because in fact this is all we really need to look at, because it pretty much tells it all, and this is one of the latest sort of quizzes on quizzing this script.
What the fuck? Who's John Paul Boyle, please? Isn't this guy called Paul Doyle? You'll know what I'm on about now, look. Isn't this the picture that we've just been given for a guy called Paul Doyle? So, if so, why is this man on an account called John Paul Boyle? Look, and this is 2009, this is the same guy. There, look, the mirror, everything we know about the Liverpool parade crash, suspect Paul Doyle, and then you gave us this picture. What? Right, so we've just discovered that this guy's called John Paul Boyle, not Paul Doyle. So who's this guy? Who is this guy? He looks nothing like John Paul Boyle. So who is this guy, and why are they saying that the other guy is called Paul Doyle when clearly he's got an account called John Paul Boyle? Tell me, does this man and this man even look remotely the same to you? Because to me, I really don't think it does. They don't look a single thing alike. Look at this guy. Now look at this guy. And you tell me that you can see the similarities, that you can see how they look like each other, because I fully cannot see any kind of resemblance. So to me, this just is the final link that we've been looking for to prove that this is not something that is just organic, and it is something that is just being pushed on us, and we are being told to be quiet and don't speak about it by the people who are organising and orchestrating events like this. But anyway, that's just my opinion, and I'm just one person. So let me know what you guys think about all this. Is this Paul Doyle? Or is this John Paul Boyle? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and repost this video.
Indeed, says I. So what else have we got? So there is an image of the guy that was in the car, and you can see clearly he's got a big blemish, some kind of birthmark on his right cheek, chin. You can't miss it. It's there. And on his image, he also had a scar on his head that looked pretty fresh. And he looked fresh-faced. He looked fit. You know what I mean? So whoever that guy were isn't just some average Joe. That to me would suggest military. Features, would we class that as English? Well, could be. Could be. I don't know. But that is certainly not anything like the images that we are expected to accept as the guy that perpetrated this event. That's nothing like him. It looks nothing like him at all. Regardless of what anybody would try and shove down your throat like they did with 9/11, like they did with 7/7, like they did with all these events where it's pretty clear that things are not correct. Balance of probability, it's bullshit. You know? And if it sits in a civil court, it sits for everybody, and it's that simple. Right, let me just have another look here. Where are we? So there's data about the registration as well. Now, there's two variations. One goes back to a Suzuki moped, and one went back to a Ford Galaxy. Now, from what it says, well, this is the registration of the car that was drove into Liverpool Sports yesterday. Why is there no results for this registration? So obviously this guy couldn't find a result. The police found at the scene a 33 on the side of it, and there were police snipers on the roof. Now in the bottom left, that is a sniper, and there were two of them, because there's actually a video of that. Now, it's been suggested that that may have been a different event, and it quite possibly could have been, but looking at the comments, people that were there, they're pretty clear that when it shut, because the video pans out to the street, they're quite happy that actually was the event before it really got packed. And then you've another take on this registration that it goes to a Galaxy. Now it says here, as usual with such tragic events, enough for people to start thinking that this was a false flag. But when you put this number plate in, it comes back as a Ford Galaxy. Now apparently in Liverpool, the undercover police fleet are Ford Galaxies. So straight away, and of course MP33, military police 33, okay? We know what 33 is, we don't have to get excited about it. It's a very powerful number. And they do like it. Now, where are we here? No, that's the one I've just done. And they're pretty similar them, so never mind. So then I put together a few bits myself, just a bit more. So these are basically the images, okay, that have been presented by the press. And so top left, you've got the image of the driver. Now, looking at some of the comments on some of the Facebook posts and such from Liverpudlians that were there, they've also suggested that they could see the hands on the wheel and they didn't look like they were real hands, they looked like mannequins. Well, I don't know, so suggested that it may have been a remote control event in this vehicle. But clearly the guy on the left has no bearing on to the guy on the right at the top, and also if we look at the bottom left, there's another image of the guy they've presented, and he's clearly got no blemish on his right cheek. Now, that's not a scar, that's clearly a birthmark of some description, and it is not there in the bottom left. And then also, interestingly, bottom right is an artist's impression while in court of the guy standing in the dock, who's supposed to be the guy at the top and the guy in the bottom left. Now, either he's been putting magic hair gel on, or he's actually had a major growth of hair in 12 hours. You know what I mean? It's like, none of that adds up. Balance of probability, It's bullshit. It's outrageous and it's bullshit. You can't have it any other way, but of course they want it every which way they can. That's just another of the... Let me just go through these. Was high on drugs, they say. So a 53-year-old man, suspected of driving a car into a crowd during Liverpool FC Trophy Parade, was allegedly high on drugs at the time. There's a various other... In comments that I've seen, they're saying that this guy came out of the Hooters, which is a pub. Others are saying he came out of a car park and sort of decided just to get behind this ambulance. Yet I saw other things that said he was in front of the ambulance and that the police were just pulling him through. So even on that score, when you get into what people are saying that were on the ground, there's a lot of dodgy, dicey stuff that just doesn't add up. Balance of probability, it's bullshit. It's as simple as that. So I think that's pretty much it that I have on... Yeah. I mean, I don't want to make a big fuss about it, but just clearly, nothing about this pre-scripted game as they presented it makes any sense whatsoever. And the latest BBC interview, or let's say so-called documentary interview, were clear. It was the fault of the Liverpool fans. Now also what was said in there, in that they had images of him being arrested and put into a van, and that van was nowhere near the street that took place. Now, given the furore and the anger of people at what he'd done, there is no way would the police have managed to get this guy another street away without major problems and just shoving him in a van. So again, that looks scripted, like they had it all set up. Somebody at that area, they were going to throw him in a van, etc., etc. And snipers on the roof. So, I don't like it. It stinks to high heaven, and from what I know about how the occultists work, that was a black operation to capitalise on the massive, joyful energy that were in Liverpool on that day. And it worked. It worked a treat, because all everybody's talking about is this dark event. And the joy and the happiness in Liverpool has been besmirched by this. Because, of course, the last thing these bastards want is people happy. They need you miserable, they need you in fear. Otherwise, you start remembering that we're actually all one big happy family. And we should be looking after each other a little bit more. Because there's another family being moved in here that's very tight, and they have bad intentions. So that, you know, as they move in one family, they need to make sure the existing family is in pieces. And that is entirely a big part of what they've done there. Now, the second part to that is the fact that as much as they try to hide the figures, and they do well, and anybody that releases the figures that are not up to scratch end up in court. But it's a simple fact that 99.9% of all stabbings, all murders, all events where cars are run into people are being carried out by this invading force. So, for future reference, when people are pointing this out, your buffoons down at Chalker, Westminster, can cite this event and say, well, look, here were a white honky. And they're doing it as well. You see? So they want to capitalise on that energy of the event so that they can use it to their advantage down the line. This is what they do when they set up these rituals. They have many sort of programs they want to set from it. And then they had a pretend lockdown, didn't they, in Liverpool? Again, a drill. Let's see if we can get away with it. People are not allowed to do this. They're not allowed to come out here. So they're capitalising on the thing itself and drilling all sorts of nonsense around in Liverpool as well. And this is the problem. If you can see that this is garbage, then everything they might say or claim or tell you to do, you don't do it. You don't do it. That's how you fight this. It's the only way. Crying about it, you just don't do it. You don't comply. It's that simple. Like when they close motorways, you should carry on and just remind them that they're obstructing the highway. Move the fucking problem. Because that is their only role as a constable, is to remove obstructions on the highway when it comes to the highway. But of course, everybody's on the road and they're doing what the fuck they want. So this is the way you fight this stuff, is you don't comply with the games that are set off after it. But they've been locking down places in Liverpool on the back of this. And lockdown is the new game, remember. And so I don't think they could ever get it again on the script that they put out in 2020. But their intention, of course, is to do it at every given point they can. This is why they're constantly shutting roads. Or a police incident. Well, that just means the police are on their own, they've shut it. That's the incident. You know what I mean? It's like, that's not how it works. But it does work like that because people go with it. So you've really got to see through this stuff. I mean, and also, straight away, as soon as this had happened, it was a white guy. Southport, they were telling us he was a Welsh choir boy. You putting out all these diversions and deflections so that you didn't recognise that it were actually an ISIS dipstick who were obviously on the radar of intel, but more importantly, given he had absolutely no ties to the area in which he carried out the event, he was told to go there. But then were he told to go there? Because the guy that they were seen arresting and putting in the police van didn't have a drop of blood on him. Not a drop. And apparently he decapitated children. You'd expect him to be covered in blood. So again, how the event, they had it set up over there, this guy's going to get put into a meat wagon when he had no blood on him at all. But the real point to show there is protecting the immigrant. They didn't tell us who we were. Playing a new game so they can tell everybody, well, white people are doing this as well. They immediately said he was a white guy. You've got to start to see through the bullshit. Because it's by seeing through the bullshit that you break the spell. It doesn't work. They could carry on spending all this money. They could carry on playing all these games. If you see through it, it doesn't work. And I've said this before, Alex Jones saga over Sandy Hook. It was a game. And it was there to stop you from being fearful of putting things on social media when you're looking at these events and undoing them. It's the same with the guy in 7/7, in the Manchester bombing, who's had nothing but trouble because he exposed it for what it was. Now, as I started with this, the key to bypassing the power they have in that spell casting to stop you from looking at it is make sure you're not attacking casualties. Unless, like some of these events, you can see the supposed dead man coming up, standing up after cameras have gone, or it's the same woman or fella that's in all these false flag events having a screaming fit. That's different. That's evidence. But in general terms, with Sandy Hook, Jones was in the dock because he'd been saying it were a false flag and that nobody were hurt. Clearly people were hurt. Same with Manchester bombing. People were hurt. And so let that be a lesson to anybody that's entering these psyops. Keep your focus off the casualties unless it's clear that they're acting, and focus on the spell, the narrative, the garbage, the script as they're pushing it out. Because if you don't do that, then they get to apportion blame like they did with 9/11, like they did with 7/7, like they did with the Manchester bombing, et al. You see through it, it doesn't work, and you can apportion blame where it belongs. Now, I also put an interesting interview on with a lass who I'm assuming was a civil servant at the time, but the embassy in London, I think it was for Israel embassy in London, and the Mossad had decided they wanted more security on this, and the Brits said no. MI5 said, sorry, we don't need it. So what did they go and do? Mossad set up a bomb outside it. They knew it was a bomb of Mossad capacity because it was a military grade bomb. It actually ate itself and disintegrated itself as it had gone, so they couldn't find it. And she spoke about the fact that it was Mossad that carried it out. in order to force MI5 to give them more security, meaning you're paying for it. You remember the image, don't you, with David Cameron with the pig, with his cock in the pig? Well, there you go, symbolic of he'd handed the entire raft of MI5, MI6 into Mossad's hands. And that's quite a time ago. Okay. Now, they've had a lot of trouble with these false flags because of the work that people have done in uprooting them. And this is why they did Jones on Sandy Hook. This is why they've gone hell for leather against the guy who's outed the Manchester bombings. But if you just give it a bit of critical thought when you're approaching this, keep off the casualties, focus on the event, the script as it's being presented by the wankers, the laws. Yeah? And you won't go wrong. So you've got to be a little bit clever. You know, when you're doing this kind of stuff, they depend on everybody just blah, 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 they're at your door. And if you're just passing information on your social media, you're not aware of all this stuff. You've not got this in your mindset when you're playing these, when you're doing this stuff. You see? This is how you protect yourself. Giving it some thought first. And that's... Because if you're doing it like that, the casualties, parents of the children, they're not going to get cross at you because you're actually helping them to see who's actually perpetrated it. But if you're going to keep saying nobody died, it's fake, it's garbage, you're going to upset mum and dad if the kids have been injured. Rightly so. And then, of course, the state gets on them, backs them to the hilt because they're using you. They're using you to censor the internet. So keep that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, when you're confronted with these events. Be careful what you put out. Be smart about how you manoeuvre and move the information. And be very careful what you say in making statements and such. You know, a statement is a statement. Make it clear that this is for education. It's a research. You're investigating. No, I said and this is how it did. You're making statements of fact, and if they can't be proven, then you're in the same boat as the perpetrators of these games who are then feeding you garbage. So you've got to be smart about these things, and because if they do get to a point where they can stop anybody speaking of them, then they've won. These events have given them what they want. That's where you do battle. And so keep that in mind. Because it looks like they're at it again. They're going to try and up this game a little bit more. But just focus to what they've done in Liverpool since this. Drill lockdowns. Yeah. Blame the football fans. And completely wrecked the joy that was in Liverpool en masse because the team, after so many decades, have won the Premiership again. That's the aim of the game. That's why they did it. And then all the programmes that they can use off it. But especially citing, look, well, white guys do this as well. Which means they've got plans for more of this. These soldier boys that have been brought over, acting for the UN, to do more of this cause running into crowds. They wouldn't have done it otherwise. Okay? And to keep you off the scent, well, look, he did it. Well, he didn't do it. Somebody did it. Somebody did it. And if that picture's correct, that's the guy that was in the car, then you know it's got nothing to do with his face that they're putting out everywhere. The face himself probably being somebody that's in Natal one way or another. And he's killing this persona now, and off he's going to go into a deeper programme in Intel, perhaps in another country, so I'll never be seen again. It's the same way some of these deceased players that in these events, they're just killing off that persona, and they're going to enter the arena in some other country doing some other programme. And that's why sometimes we know that they're acting. But there are real casualties in these events, and we mustn't lose sight of that. But you are doing the casualties a favour by uprooting the spell, breaking the spell so people are not fooled, and then blame an innocent party, which is what they're very good at. They've been very good at this forever. False flags is the game. Go for Tonkin, even Pearl Harbor. You know, it's all false flags. They hit something and then blame somebody else and then get what they want off the back of that. Same with what's going on now in Ukraine. I mean, who is behind this nonsense of really attacking Putin with these sophisticated drones? It's not Zelensky, is he? His only talent is dancing like a woman and acting on the gob. And Trump's now said, I'm out. So you can see they're formulating this Europe versus Putin. And you can bet your life. Because the PCIs are so embedded in UK, they are the fucking UK, that a lot of it will be being done from MI6, MI5, which of course is under Mossad. Because the greatest move they could get is for Putin to throw something over here. That'd change things, would it not? Would that not create a state of emergency? Would that not pull in this conscription that they're after? Germany's already talking about it. They're not ruling out conscription. See the game, people, because this conscription is a major part and play of what they need in order to remove the males, the white males and the black males from these lands and in the UK, United States, in order these subcultures can come in and the only opposing force is females, grandmas and granddads and children. Mark my words, ladies and gentlemen, that is the plan. You know, most underworld groups now are Albanians or Romanians or Eastern Europeans. And we went through a live stream last year, remember, and I cited which Holy See family controls which particular mafia. They're none of them are on their own, even Colombians, all these so-called drug lord mafia systems all have a Holy See family running them. PCIs, ladies and gentlemen. The Venetians, the usurers. They took over Rome. They took over Europe. They took over America. Every nation on the planet they control. And they control the new bank, Islam. Not because I say so, because if you watch the interviews, you listen to the scripts, they make the claim that Islam is just a broom. It's just a broom. And it's a bank. So that sort of covers that. Two important things this week that have taken place, and people just need to look at it with those eyes rather than being fooled and bedazzled by the garbage on the media. Right, who's joined us? And then we'll crack on with this judge's spilling the beans as to what's going on, and of course it's from an American perspective. But what I read of it was very interesting, and I didn't read it all. Right, Slipknot says, alright, Sean, everyone, Slipknot. June says, good evening, Sean, evening, June, Jerry, evening, Sean, all, evening, Jerry, PY Music, evening, all, evening, Paul, Sasha, I told you that me's a spy, and he's not the only one, Alex. Well, Sasha, the fact that you've come on that suggests you could actually be me, the me. So, you need to expand on that, or I'm going to take it that Sasha is just me reborn. So, mods, keep your eyes out. But your opportunity, Sasha, is here and now. Tell us why you believe that. And then you might get to comment more. Cosmic says, I have found you. Evening, Cosmic. AMG, good evening, Sean, Stumpy, Janet, Rizzler, and all our mutants. Evening to you, AMG. Now, I saw your post this week in which you had a lot to say about an incident you reported to the police, and they said they were interested. Tell us all about it on here, AMG, because on which police force was it that decided they didn't want to give a shit about what you'd actually dealt with? So, evening, AMG. Mew says, welcome to White Asylum Nights and inmates alike. Hi, Sean, I am Mew. Evening, Sean, and all folks in chat says DJ from 88. Evening, DJ. Lorraine says, evening, everyone. Evening, Lorraine. Big E, evening, you lovely people. Truth comes as conqueror only to those who have lost the art of receiving it as a friend. Quite true. Big E, welcome. MG, Sasha, I was on to me some time ago. He uses a few different names on here. Yeah, CC, and he used that. So, Sasha, right now, You're looking to me like another version of the me. Your only way out of that is to expand on what you've said. Where are we there? Jane says, evening Sean, good evening chatters, good evening AMG and Riz. Evening Jane. Mew says, Sasha, pray tell, who do you speak of? Me left the asylum. Me has been back with a few different names, says AMG. Well, there you go. True says Sasha. Okay, well, Sasha, the floor is yours. ICCC AMG, another one. Myself and Jane spotted him last week. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I really don't give a donkey's piss who comes on here. It doesn't matter. But if you're going to start being a dick, you'll get slotted. We've got more nights now to do the slotting. So, yeah, we don't give a shit. I'm not going to sit here going, oh, is there any scammers on here tonight? I don't care. I don't care less who comes on here. We don't care. But behave yourself. Behave yourself and fuck off. It's that simple. Where are we there? LFX. Evening, LFX. Paul says, evening, Sean and fellow inmates. This is the second coming. And it is from within. We are the resurrection and the life. Yeah, Stone Roses a bit there. I thought you were going to bump into Stone Roses and start singing me, old China. Evening, Paul. Did me, he behave himself? LFX. There we are. Anthony Thomas. Good evening, Sean, chat participants and friends. Of course, evening, Anthony. Right on QCMG. LFX. Jew Nasser Sanj. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, they all come out now looking like old Jesus, don't they? We're saying, oh, look at him, he's so something. But as I said, I could see in Tommy that institutionalised angst that I've seen in so many colleagues that have done stints in prison in the past. I mean, I don't see people like that anymore, but way back in the day, that's what you used to see. They're in there too long, they get a bit institutionalised. So, I don't know, but he's way below par. He doesn't understand anything outside of the script that he gets excited about. But LFX Robinson's revenue racket. Well, they're going to shoot him to stardom now, and make no mistake about it. Disciple of the Messiah. Peace and grace, Brother Sean and family, and peace and grace back to you, disciple of the Messiah. Welcome. Lex gives it the evening, Sean, all the evening. Lex. Sasha. Moopit, my old account, is now investigated by VTK, Department of High Tech Criminal. I asked for that and they did nothing. LFX, probability. I was told he was retired military commando by my scout friend today. Okay. Ooh. Where are we there? That jumped up like it normally does. Where are we? Ford Galaxy equals 33 in gematria, says Slipknot. Yep, thanks for that. Slipknot, no wonder they're all running around in the galaxies in Liverpool. They have some posher ones up here where we are. AMG says, during the Spanish Grand Prix today, there was a radio message to Max Verstappen that said 33 laps gone, Max, 33 laps to go. Definitely a shout out to their fellow Masons. Could be. Jane says, I haven't verified, but either his Facebook or LinkedIn profile has a background screen with 33 showing clearly on it. Okay, thanks, Jane. Miss Pagina O'Muckalone, do any of these kamikaze drivers run through people when there's Islamic crowds gathered in parades or special Islamo Day celebrations? No. The thing about Islam is we know where you're all on a Friday in your dresses. We know where you are. But I don't blame Muslims. The Muslims born here are not running around doing that. There are many, they're in ISIS mindset. And I know of a few. But in the main, the Muslims that are born here, they don't want any of this nonsense. They came here to get away from it. And when you see them in the black with the slitty eye, that's not Islam, that's ISIS. That's ISIS. So if you want to look through these ISIS mindsets, or just look for husbands of these wives that are running around with all black and a slit. Because that has nothing to do with Islam. That weren't addressing Pakistan. It weren't addressing in Islamic India. It weren't in Afghanistan. It weren't in Saudi. It weren't in Iraq. It weren't in Iran. It's specific to ISIS and ISIL. So there you go. You can see it yourself. Use your brain. So the answer to that is no, they don't. Slipknot says, no news stories are real, it's all bollocks. Absolutely, mate. I mean, what the fuck is going on with these advertisements today? I saw one the other day, Lynx, spraying it down his sack, and then there's this guy sniffing his sack, and then somebody put it right back in, and there's a guy sniffing. What are they trying to do? Get kids to do this at school as like a soccer game or football nudges to jump on it and start. I mean, fuck me, Murray Whitehouse. Where have you gone? What a shame. Where's your grandkids? It's so twisted. You've got KFC, one's ritual, and silence. This is real stuff, that, by the way. And then they're putting the guy watching it comes out to KFC. It's twisted. The TV is so twisted. It's quite ridiculous, to be honest. So I wouldn't just... not even just the news, Slipknot. It's the whole thing. It's satanic. And you're giving it your energy, you know, if you watch it. Yeah, AMG agrees. Oh, it's gone up again. LFX, is that blowing smoke free? Or maybe he's just backfiring. New says most of the Mank fans are sad and angry about Liverpool winning. Well, of course they are. Why wouldn't they be? Not that I give a shit about football, to be quite honest, so it doesn't bother me. Years ago, when I was recovery breakdown mechanic, our first job was to clear the road motorway when called out by police, exactly. That's it. That's the only role of a constabulary on the highway, is to remove the obstruction. Well, on a road, well, that's different, isn't it? Slipknot, same with JFK, Hawksbury, yeah. Miles Mathis has a big piece on that. I think I actually published it on the websites as well. Richard Diol says maybe that's the guy. Lorraine Lee, rugby soldier, back in 2013, yeah. Well, I've looked into that as well. There's some strange anomalies around that as well, but I'll send them more. AMG, Chris Spivey, did a massive analysis of it. Is this the Liverpool thing? Okay. Have you got a link to that? Lorraine, send it to Mew. Lorraine Lee Rigby with the old lady walking in the background with her shopping bags. It just didn't look right, that one either. AMG, because, I mean, you think about it. For a guy to all of a sudden decide he's going on street and start chopping people up, it's not going to happen for somebody that were born here, is it? I don't care what colour you are. It's just not in our makeup. But these guys that have been in Africa and pulled into child soldiering from like age 10, they don't know anything else. It's normal. And some of these backwater places, I mean, you've got to remember, these criminals, these immigrants that are pouring in, with the exception of the soldier types, are the worst of the fucking worst in these other countries. They're emptying the prisons and putting them here. So when I hear people talk about immigration is lovely, I think, I hope they come to your fucking house first. Lorraine, AMD did a lot of digging back in the day, yeah. I think we're surprised now if something isn't a false flag. Yeah, precisely. If you're awake, but you've got to remember, the majority of the masses aren't awake. They just go with it and think it's real because it's on telly. I mean, a lot of time during that book script, I used to talk to him. They go, well, if that were true, it'd be on telly. And I'm like, oh my God. Forget it. Stop it. Let him go and get the oysters. The oysters. Benefactor, I show why silent. I joined late. Well, that's very naughty. Evening, benefactor. Don't forget to press the like button, says Lorraine. Yeah, don't forget. Oh, Muckalone says, there's nothing better than being bedazzled by your white fresh shirt shown in the mix. Looking fresh as always. Well, thanks very much there. Oh, Muckalone. I hope you're cleaning up after yourself. Cosmic to me, 2004 sheep. Okay. Nicely explained, someone said Jerry. Well, thanks for that, Jerry. AMG says, I reported it to the radio network that covers Southampton and they contact Hampshire Police if required. I later spoke to officers who said in a similar situation in future to call 999. As it happens, I saw him this morning, after he was refused at another club and restrained him until police arrived and arrested him for possession of an offensive weapon. Right, so the story's gone on. But didn't you say on your post that you'd reported the fact that you'd disarmed somebody with a knife and they said they weren't interested? Have I got that right? You need to be careful there, Floydie lad, out there, in all these tosses everywhere, man. Muckalone says, yeah, I'm allergic to letterbox Bombay outfits. I think all the adverts on TV are now CGI, says Lorraine. Sasha Channel, only 13 days old. Well, there you go. Sasha, you're out. Mods, get rid. Alright, we're not that stupid, Sasha, you little prick. And whoever you are, and you're not that important anyway, but, get away, go and find somebody else to aggravate. What else did I have there? Let me have a look. Oh, there's one of the Jimmy Savile's Vagina's rent boys that he didn't pay. There's 3 of them in there, apparently, that's setting fire to his ass. Storm is set to announce major EU deal on London's summit, so he's going to push us back into EU. Of course, we've seen her talking about the Talmud being the doctrine of the EU. Stormer surrenders access to UK waters to EU, Brexit reset deal. So it's just going back to exactly where it were. This bastard, I don't like this guy. Pope Leo XIV affirmed traditional Catholic doctrine regarding marriage and defended the dignity of the unborn for his first major remarks as pontiff during a private audience with the Vatican diplomatic corps. Well, look at that. Carolyn Harris, who chairs the all-party parliament group on beauty and well-being, says it is vital that the public understands the dangers of UV. Well, if you've been avoiding UV, that's why you're absolutely outrageous to the eye. Why did Noah build an ark when he could have simply paid more taxes to stop climate change? Israel preparing possible preemptive attack on Iranian nuclear facilities, US intelligence. Well, the US is sending bombers now, fleets of bombers over to some Pacific bases and it is in distance for bombing Iran. So, Brazilian tribe sues for 113 million after claims they became addicted to porn after Elon Musk's Starlink system gave them access to high-speed internet. Yeah, that sounds about right. And one of them were Germany saying that they're not ruling out conscription. So this also now is a Telegraph this week. It says this was the week Sir Keir Starmer, or Jimmy Savile's vagina, finally lost control of the agenda, buffeted by events, panicked by creating poll ratings, goaded into launching an over-the-top attack on Nigel Farage. The Prime Minister is pulling every lever to no avail. The public has made up its mind. It is angry and it doesn't want to know. Bereft of purpose, focused on short-term survival above all else, the government has become almost entirely reactive, putting tactics over coherence. Its foundation strategy, if one can call it that, is in tatters. Its attempts at fiscal credibility have been abandoned. It isn't reforming the public sector. It isn't building more homes or fixing any of the UK's problems. And it is contradicting itself on immigration. Its core left-wing policies, Chagos, the EU reset, ditching the Rwanda scheme, tax hikes, releasing criminals early, DEI, damaging schools, are driving a surge in support of the reform. Tommy's out. Trump's still looking good. Elon Musk left Doge. Oh, God. It's just... La La Land is just beyond redemption. Beyond redemption, I tell thee. What else have I got? Excuse me. Okay, that's about it, I think. So, well, that the week that was, as they say. What else have I got here? LFX recovery breakdown mechanic. Clear the red road motorway. A quality service. However, working with the police, that's your own ass fault. Moo. Oh, Moo's getting told off. Lorraine says Elon Musk had a black eye yesterday. Really. AMG, the call was from the radio network, who said the police weren't interested at the time. Oh, I see. We disarmed him of a broken bottle and were watching him in hiding until we got the radio message. I would say it was a radio network decision rather than the police. Oh, okay, well, thanks for that, AMG. Although I remember a friend or a colleague who were on the phone to me while he had travelling community hacking his door with machetes, and while he was on the phone with the police, on the phone to me on another phone, and I could hear the police lady saying, well, we're not bothered, we're not coming. You'll have to deal with it yourself. So I said to him, you need to inform the police that you're going to get serious now and you're going to protect your property, which he did, and they said, okay. So I know the reason why I picked that up, my friend, is because I've witnessed that happening. You know, if you've got people at your door with machetes and police are saying, no, we're not bothered, it's a bit of a problem, isn't it? Let's be fair. Right, so... Where are we? So, Jerry says, he got back in your box slap. Got to earn a coin, fella. I was also RAC recovery mechanic. Says Mew. Sure, when you're old school, you do just do what you've always done and get involved. Well, I'm exactly the same, my friend. I mean, that can be... It just happens, doesn't it? You just, boom, you're off. Boom! I mean, you know, for all I've said and such, if I saw any coppers in trouble, I'd be in there like a shot, you know what I mean? It's just the way it is. Yeah, you're right, and it's an old school. That's just the way we're programmed. Fair play and all that malarkey. But yeah, I mean, flaming heck, there's some of the things I've just got into sometimes where you don't even think, it's just a poof, immediate, bang, you're in. And yeah, so I know exactly what you're saying, AMG. Oh, good Mew. Asphalt and motorways just having a duet, says LFX. We know that, me old China. We know. Right. I nearly ended stream then. My God, I'm pressing wrong buttons. So, somebody's ringing me on a live stream. Oh, for God's sake. Learn, will you? God, grief. Most people run from trouble as we run to it. Yeah, absolutely. That's very true, sir. Right, where were we? Browser. So, chaps and chapesses, this is a retired judge, and it was in the Main Republic. Oh, it was an email alert. 11th of the 7th, or 7th of the 11th, because it's American, in 2013. It says that I should bear witness unto truth. John, 1833, David E. Robinson, publisher. Okay? If the trumpet give an uncertain sound, who shall prepare himself for battle? 1 Corinthians. So that's cited at the top of this gig. And this is a judge telling us as it is. And he says, Retired Judge Spills the Beans by Judge Dale. Stuff you're not supposed to know. Hang on. Right. I'll tell you what I'm doing wrong here. That should be there. And I'm supposed to move it off there. So right, now I've got it. Right, stuff you're not supposed to know. And as I said, if you take as your point of reference from now on what we discussed last week, so that's beneficial owner Crown, Trust Corporation, United Kingdom, and then Atlas, everybody coming in as trustee or executor, whatever it is, and basically chopping your own head off. Decapitation by self. So suicide, you might say. So he says, I didn't plan on writing part 5. But given the global movement in play to collapse the fiat financial dominance historically created and controlled by the Vatican, European royal land elite, plus the retaliatory efforts by the United States corporation to recoup their control of America, I felt a need to point out the flaws in their corporate process. You probably identify with this corporate process as a legal process, but it really isn't about what is legal or lawful, because all process is about the enforcement of contracts or the imposition and enforcement of corporate regulations called statutes. The best advice you will ever receive is to avoid their courts whenever possible. There is no justice to be found in those courts unless you are a member of the Vatican, the royal or elite, or have purchased diplomatic immunity. The courts. The only constitutional court in America is the International Court of Trades, which was created because no foreign nation government would trade with the corporate United States until they provided a way for these foreign nations to enforce their trade agreements with America. Note, historically, the World Court was created to provide nations with a venue to enforce their trade agreements. But the corporate United States refused the court's invitation to participate because they were denied control over the court. All of the other American courts are pseudo-courts or fictions and simply are corporate administrative offices designed to resemble courts, and all of the judges are simply executive administrators designed to resemble judges. Now, here, they've been going on for a long time, they're called star courts or star chambers. And as Cork said, it's case law is judge law. It's got nothing to do with law. The purpose of these pseudo courts is only to settle contract disputes, and since George Washington's government was military in structure, if either party refuses to participate, these courts cannot become involved, and the dispute is dead in the water. My use of the term dead in the water is not a canard, because these pseudo courts are unconstitutional courts of admiralty and international law of the sea. The Washington Monument was completed in 1884 as a tribute to George Washington and his military government, which is actually a sea-level obelisk that infers that all of America is underwater and thus subject to the laws of admiralty as opposed or contrary to the intended constitutional civilian government under common law. The pseudo-judges of these pseudo-courts have no powers without the consent of both the plaintiff and the defendant, and in every case the judge must determine that he has consent personam and subject matter jurisdiction before he can act or access the Sescu Trust. So that's not the Sescu V Trust, which is the deceased estate, it's the life estate to which you are the absolute sole beneficiary. Okay? Where are we? Note, all tradable securities must be assigned a QSIT number before they can be offered to investors. Birth certificates and social security applications are converted into government securities, assigned QSIT numbers, grouped into lots, and then are marketed as a mutual fund investments. Upon maturity, the profits are moved into a government Sescu trust, and if you are still alive, the certified documents are reinvested. So that's your national insurance accounts that if you put them into, I can't remember what it was called, back in the day, you could see it. It is these funds contained in this Sescu Trust that the judge, clerk and county prosecutor are really after or interested in. So in my word, what I'm saying is, I'll just give you a bit of an heads up. My premise is this. The entire system as we know it today is the means for this corporate system to extort the equity held in the Cester Q Trust, which is the life estate. And that the deceased estate is there only as a facilitator to create that ability for them to breach trust, to trespass, and because they're all acting together from the claimant right up to the judge, it's a conspiracy. Okay, so that's basically the thrust of the case that I'm playing with now at Chancery. This trust actually pays all of your debts, but nobody tells you that because the elite consider those assets to be their property. And the Federal Reserve System is responsible for the management of those investments. Social Security, SSI, SSD, Medicare and Medicaid are all financed by the trust. The government makes you pay taxes and a portion of your wages supposedly to pay for these services, which they can borrow at any time for any reasons, since they cannot access the Cester Q Trust to finance their wars or to bail out Wall Street and their patron corporations. The public is encouraged to purchase all kinds of insurance protection when the trust actually pays for all the physical damages, medical costs, new technology and death benefits. The hype to purchase insurance is a ploy to keep us in poverty and profit off our stupidity, because the Vatican owns the controlling interest in all insurance companies. You may receive a monthly statement from a mortgage company, loan company, or utility company, which usually has already been paid by the trust. Now, when me and my mate were looking into this over the last 4 years, like I said, in depth, we found that this system pays the Vatican 40% on every transaction. So the Vatican is happy to unleash this civil system, or admiralty system, because it's getting 40% kickback on everything. That's a lot of dolly. That's a lot of lolly, folks. Yeah? So 40% is what it gets. Almost all of these corporate businesses double dip and hope that you have been conditioned well enough by their credit scams to pay them a second time. Instead of paying that statement next time, sign it accepted for value, approved, and mail it back to them. If they then contact you about payment, ask them to send you a true bill instead of a statement, and you will be glad to pay it. A statement documents what was due and paid, whereas a true bill represents only what is due. Now that's interesting because he's suggesting you can endorse a statement. So I've learned something there. Banks and utility companies have direct access into those Cester Q trusts, and all they need is your name, social security number and signature. Criminal law. There are no criminal laws in America because criminal laws would imply that the corporate United States government is a sovereign that has absolute power over all living flesh and blood Americans, which of course is not true because a corporation is a fiction and therefore cannot be sovereign. Man is sovereign and is in control of his own destiny, and one day he will finally wake up and realise this to be true. There are, however, criminal contracts being enforced against us, and with our consent, which are separatistiously called criminal statutes. Our consent has been obtained by them vis-à-vis our silence and failure to act or protest, which under law is defined as tacit procuration. Now, Slick the bastard barrister told me that that doesn't act for them. You see, this is what we've done. We've responded to everything to show that we're not operating under tacit procuration. We want answers. We want contract. They don't have one. We created one. They won't have it. The judge acknowledged it, didn't accept it. He basically testified for the prosecution, which is what they all do, because had they accepted the endorsements at court, then the game would have been over and the court wouldn't have got its fees and the prosecution wouldn't have got its fees. So I sort of knew they weren't going to accept that. But then to refuse payment in coin on the day, now then, old Judge Burrows there at Preston is in big fucking doo-doo. Our consent has been, yeah, okay. E.g., tacit procuration. If someone accuses you of theft in writing and you fail to respond or deny those allegations in writing, your failure to deny or act is considered an admission of guilt. Right? You receive a bill for goods or services that you never ordered or received and you fail to deny those allegations, your omission represents the truth of the matter, which imposes an obligation to pay. Collection companies frequently use tacit procuration to establish indebtedness to them on a discharged debt that they had purchased from some corporate business. They're already discharged when they come at you, these debt collectors. Now you're probably thinking, no criminal laws. Well, that can't be true. A whole lot of people have tried, convicted, and are doing time in American jails for breaking criminal laws. And my response to that is true. They are in jail because they unknowingly accepted the criminal contract on behalf of their birth certificate and consented to be imprisoned as a condition of their conviction and punishment. Their lawyer didn't help any because he reinforced the situation by and through his notice of appearance to represent you. It is this birth certificate that is under arrest, which I will explain shortly. Note, criminal contracts are graded according... See, when I were in court last for myself, and you said, are you showing you? No, but I were waiving the entry, and I was saying, no, but I do have the credit, you know. Well, do you have a bank account? No, but the trust does. Well, do you have a driving licence? Well, no, but the trust does. And that, you're not giving them the joiner. You're not giving them what they want. And then, what's your plea? I'm like, what? What do you mean? He went, what's your plea? I went, guilt? You mean, oh, right, which means debt in German. Oh, right, well, is there somebody coming forward with to tender a bill? I'll be happy to settle. No, nobody coming through with a bill. Well, if there's no bill, there's no debt. What am I doing here? Cock. I mean, of course I didn't say cock. I mean, flipping there, but... Anyway, that's just basically how I played it last time. And the little faces. Oh, the poor little lambs didn't know what to do. Criminal contracts are graded according to the severity of the crime alleged, and the grading is identified as either summary, misdemeanour, felony or capital offences. The criminal process usually begins with a police officer issuing a citation or making an arrest with or without a warrant, or the police officer or county attorney prepares a complaint based upon a sworn affidavit or on information which is presented. Where am I here? Presented to a judge, and a warrant is then issued. The defendant is subsequently arrested and is brought before a judge for arraignment. The complaint and warrant will reflect your birth name, or identify you as a John Doe. If your name is unknown, which is typed out in all capital letters, this is not a mistake on their part. Because it is your birth certificate that is under arrest and not your living flesh and blood person. The hope of these pseudo courts is that the flesh and blood person will be intimidated enough to accept responsibility for the birth certificate. Sounds crazy, but nothing is what it seems. It's all smoke and mirrors. Most police officers do not know or have these details and believe in what they're doing and believe the lawyers who counsel them in law like they are gods. Big mistake on their part, because just like everyone else, they too have been vigorously lied to. Which is what I was saying last week. Even the lawyers and everybody's been lied to. Nobody's operating in accordance with law. But they're taught that they are. You can trust lawyers to be inherently honest. Police officers are instructed to always print or type the defendant's name in capital letters, but you're never told the reason why. As a precaution, you should always carry a copy of your birth certificate with you as part of your identification papers, which I will explain in the next paragraph. Now, if you present your long form, you're the creditor. That's your evidence that you're the creditor, the SESQ trust, not the SESQV trust, which is the birth certificate that incorporates first name, surname. At your arraignment or trial, the judge will ask you if you are the named individual, all caps birth name, on the complaint, and your natural response will be to answer in the affirmative. But that is exactly what you don't want to do. Excuse me. Remove your birth certificate and respond to him by stating, I am making a special limited appearance on behalf of the defendant, who is right here, and hold up your birth certificate. Yeah? Then state the following. As I understand this process, Judge, the county attorney or police officer has levelled a criminal charge with the clerk and against the trust, using the all caps name that appears on the birth certificate. The use of capital letters is dictated by the US Printing Style Manual, which explains how to identify a corporation. The clerk, who is the administrator of the SESQ trust, then appointed you, Judge, as the trustee or the trust, and since neither of you can be the beneficiary, that leaves me, and therefore you are my trustee, pal. So, as my trustee, I instruct you to discharge this entire matter with prejudice and award the penalties for these crimes to be paid to me in compensation and damages for my false arrest. Note: the law of trusts dictate that an administrator, trustee and beneficiary cannot serve two positions in a trust. So a trustee cannot be a beneficiary too. Oh, so you can't serve two positions. Ah, ha, ha. So there we go. Well, that's interesting. I'm going to have to look at that again. The trustee, Judge, has no alternative but to honour your demands, but you have to get this right and act with confidence. You really need to know this information well so that you can be hoodwinked or confused, so you can't be hoodwinked or confused by either of them. They will or may attempt to play some mind games with you if you display any doubts, stammer or display a lack of confidence. Oh yes, and they do. Appearances, the pomp and majesty of these pseudo courts is totally for your benefit and is intended to invoke fear and intimidation. If you show fear or intimidation, you get a pony ride. Note: I've seen and heard judges and prosecutors interfering with the defendant's response, which made the defendant become confused and he was subsequently committed into a mental hospital for psychiatric evaluation. The judge and prosecutor successfully twisted what the defendant was trying to say, and then the judge ordered a mental evaluation. Now, again, another game they play is try and coax you into contempt of court. You have to be so careful. You can't go wrong if you begin every sentence with all due respect, and then ask a question. Always ask questions. Always ask a question. Now, I remember being in court years ago, and as I stood up, his magistrate stood up and said, "Do not answer the question with the question." And I'm thinking, what? Well, you've just completely screwed me over. And then this prosecutor come out with some garbage. "Mr. Young, you don't like authority." Well, that just threw me completely. Because everything I prepared were for beautiful and lovely. And then all of a sudden, they whacked me with these two things. Well, I completely forgot everything I was going to do and caused as much havoc as I could without getting into any further trouble, of course. But, you know, and that was years ago, of course, when I was practising. God, it was hard work, that practice. It got me in a lot of trouble. Where am I? Yeah, right. Understand that the county attorney will be forced to pay the cost of court out of his own pocket if the case is discharged, so he isn't going to give up that easily. And the judge, clerk and county attorney stand to make a pretty penny off your conviction and incarceration. So don't screw it up. If the county attorney begins to act too cocky with you, you can take the wind out of his sails by asking him to produce the 1040 for this case. If he denies the need to do such a thing, inform him that you will be taking care of that for him ASAP, as soon as possible. Now, I asked that in paperwork, and he may move for discharge at that point because you are a little too dangerous or smart. The last thing the prosecutor wants is the IRS examining his files for the last 7 years because he makes money on every conviction. But he doesn't pay taxes on this money. As a rule, he usually only declares the salary he receives. Also, should you accidentally find yourself in a mental hospital, the psychiatrist who is assigned or appointed to evaluate you is just as corrupt as the judge, clerk or county attorney. And he will falsify all of your responses to him, just so that you are recommitted back into the mental facility with a review in 6 months. So lie to him and deny that you ever made such remarks. Of course, if you accept the criminal charges against your birth certificate, then you will instantly be deemed sane. Sure, they tried that with me, my God, donkeys years ago. Copper tried to... He got a doctorate. Anyway, this doctor was fucking savvy. He was a good one. I remember him bollocking the living shit out of this shithead sergeant. "How dare you call me out to this gentleman? There is absolutely nothing wrong with this gentleman at all." This sergeant was squirming his little ass off. That were in Aki police station. Oh, we're at Red Bank. I can't remember. Anyway, I've been in that many back in the day. You forget. Right. So as soon as you accept the punishments, you're sane as death, and you'll get a certificate to say so. Sorry that I had to be the one to tell you this, but this is how corrupt many of my fellow judges truly are, and it should explain why my conscience caused me to retire early. Before I learned what was really going on, I believed that my duties and performance were entirely constitutional. I was lied to also. Citations. The citation process can be handled much easier through the mail. When a police officer issues you a citation, he's actually requesting you to contract with him. He is alleging in writing that you violated a corporate regulation, which you have accepted by signing, and thus requires you to respond. The police officer is instructed to explain that your signature is merely an acknowledgement that you have received a copy of the citation, but in actuality your signature is notification to the court and the judge that you have accepted or consented to this offer to contract, which also grants the judge consent personam and subject matter jurisdiction over you and the case. You can cancel that contract, however, by rescinding your consent. The Federal Truth in Lending Act provides that any party to a contract may rescind his consent within 3 business days of entering into such a contract. So across the face of the citation, you would print or type in large print the following words: "I do not accept this offer to contract, and I do not consent to these proceedings." Use blue ink for admiralty or purple ink for royalty. Admiralty is the court of, and royalty represents your sovereignty. Either way is appropriate. Sign your signature underneath in blue ink or purple ink and in front of a notary and under your signature type. Without prejudice, UCC 1308. So, Goods of Sales Act 1979 is the UK equivalent of the UCC. This is another way to declare that you may not be held responsible for this contract pursuant to the Uniform Commercial Code. Serve the cancelled citation back on the clerk court along with the certificate of service by certified mail. Return receipt requested. This kills the citation. And removes your consent and removes the jurisdiction of the court. All at the same time. It's really that simple. Note, a certificate of service is a letter that first identifies the citation and then defines how and when you return the document to the court and is signed. If not denied, it becomes a truth in commerce by tacit procuration. So is that why they don't accept conditional acceptance? Because it has to be accepted and signed. Interesting. Remember to keep a copy of everything in case the clerk attempts to trash your response, which certainly will not happen with the certificate of service or if it is mailed back by the notary. The notary is actually a deputy secretary of the state and is more powerful than the court clerk. Public notaries originate from the time of the Egyptian and Roman scribes who were the purveyors of certified documents, which are sworn affidavits. Certified documents and sworn affidavits are true in commerce, e.g. birth certificates are certified documents on bonded paper. The word bonded is derived from the bondage, as in slavery, which makes all of us bond slaves, to whomever retains custody of our original birth certificates. Apparently they're in Puerto Rico. I bet you believed that the Emancipation Proclamation freed the slaves, and it did for a short time. And then the birth certificate and the 14th Amendment enslaved us all. Cha-cha-cha! Summons and lawsuits. The summons process, whether it is defined as a civil or criminal action, is once again an offer to contract, despite the words used to command your appearance or response. It too can be cancelled just by following the same procedure as the citation process above. $1 million lawsuit is no different than a citation. And both can be cancelled. Hard to believe, isn't it? Does your lawyer know about this? You bet he does, but he is not permitted to embarrass the court, and besides, court is where he makes his lolly. Note, how many of you have ever attempted to avoid jury duty? All you had to do was cancel the summons of offer and contract, notarise it and mail it back to the jury commissioner. Well, getting notarised now is not that easy. Don't worry. They won't bother you because you are obviously too smart and may influence the jury. The jury controls the court and not the prosecutor and judge. Only if it's a jury trial. If it's a trial by jury, that's different. If you know that, they lose and the defendant wins, which is why they prefer only the dumbed-down candidates to serve on a jury. Yeah, it's got to be of your peers, so you've got to insist that it's... I mean, I once did that and it went away. I made it clear that I wanted a jury of my peers, meaning I defined it as men and women at the same level of understanding as I. And that disappeared. There are a few matters or issues that are next to impossible to circumvent or quash because of the depth of corruption within these pseudo courts, such as child custody and the division of property resulting from a divorce. Yeah, they're after your kids, all right. There's your child trafficking right in your face. While they got you convinced that Mel Gibson and his happy crew were saving... Yeah, you're not seeing it. The birth state claims the custody of your children pursuant to the birth certificate and records them under the Department of Transport as a state-owned vessel. A marriage is a contract and all that is required is a prenuptial agreement to complete the marriage. But if you are sufficiently indoctrinated to believe that a judge or mayor or a minister or priest must join you in holy matrimony, and you subsequently apply for a licence, Now you both have married the state as well. Now the state is entitled to its fair share of the division of your marital property, should the marriage not work out or should you die, called probate. Some people might say that a divorce should be included on this list of impossible issues, but then they don't know what I know. Divorce. An action in divorce is a request to break the licensed marriage contract. If you desire a divorce and your spouse refuses to consent to a divorce, no state judge will grant you a divorce decree because the judge has not been granted the consent of both parties. There is a way around this, however, which your lawyer will never admit to because he cannot make any money from giving you truthful or sound advice. Note, Puerto Rico is a United States territory acquired from Spain, and it still operates under Spanish law. This was never changed by the corporate United States when Puerto Rico became a US territory. So first you need to fly to Puerto Rico. Once in Puerto Rico, you can establish a residency by simply opening a post office box for a period of 3 days. Just after opening the post office box, hire a local paralegal to prepare an action in divorce for you. The paralegal will file the divorce petition immediately, which is generally a certified form document, and it will be heard by a Puerto Rican judge within 3 days. Under Spanish law, your spouse is not required to be served a divorce petition, only the divorce decree. 5 days after the decree, your former spouse will receive the divorce decree in the mail, written entirely in Spanish, which cannot be contested and must be honoured by all US federal and state courts. No, immediately after Puerto Rico judge declares you divorced, if you choose, you can marry again by contract or by license. Both are legitimate, but no one will ever tell you that. The division of marital property and custody of children is a much more complicated issue, but at least the divorce can not be utilised as leverage against you to divide up your property. Less than proportionally, which is exactly why American judges will not bifurcate the issues involved in divorce, e.g. divorce division of property, custody support and alimony. The hope is that your desire to obtain a divorce is worth more to you than anything else you own, now or in the future. Foreclosure. If you're involved in a foreclosure or you're thinking about filing for bankruptcy protection to buy you more time instead of trying to defeat the corrupt bank and your creditors in a state or federal court, where the cards are certainly stacked against you, plan to file for bankruptcy and do it this way. To ensure you come out on top, all bankruptcy forms are printable, can be obtained online, and they can be completed in longhand or with an ink pen. The forms to use are B1 through and including B8. You only need to prepare and file the first 5 or 6 pages to obtain a case number, and then you must sit through a credit counselling session, which can all be done in a day. When you completely finish with preparing your petition, you should have filed about 58 pages in total, and the filing fee is around $280. Here's the reason for using the bankruptcy courts. List all your debts on one schedule, and when it comes to listing your assets, include your birth certificate and its QSIC number. The value of the mutual fund investment for your birth certificate can also be found online using the QSIC number under Fidelity Investments. You will discover that it's worth multi-millions, but you must state the QSIC number on your asset schedule, or birth certificate will be discharged as frivolous by a judge or the trustee. Now, when I looked at mine on Fidelity, there were two. One had 22 billion in it, and one had 17 billion in it. And then when the bookstip hit, one went up to 24 billion and the other went up to 22 billion. So obviously I've been a busy boy in my little life, and they've been throwing bets and securities and bonds against me for years. They must love me. I'm not sure about that. But my mum loves me, so it doesn't matter. Here's the reason for using bankruptcy court. Oh, no, I've done that. Wait a minute. The bankruptcy judge will then appoint a lawyer trustee to dissolve the mutual fund investment, pay off your debts, and the balance must be paid to you. This procedure usually attracts the attention of the DOJ or Department of Justice because they don't want the lawyer trustee to screw up and shortchange the Vatican, the Federal Reserve and the corporate United States, and so they tend to warn or threaten the lawyer trustee to be very careful. Most of these mutual fund investments involve a group of between 10 to 25 birth certificates, and so only a fraction of the mutual fund belongs to you. The bankruptcy judge will not certify the final disposition until the lawyer trustee can prove his math and every aspect of his work, because the judge inherits responsibility for the trustee's errors, if he made any. After the first lawyer trustee resigns, you can probably cut a deal with the DOJ, or you can proceed on with the same bankruptcy proceedings and the newly appointed lawyer trustee. Now, isn't that easier and better than attacking or defending yourself against the bank and a bunch of greedy creditors, knowing full well that the cards are stacked against you because of the Vatican and the Federal Reserve System? While you are in bankruptcy, you are protected. No one can proceed against you for any debts or foreclosure, as long as you have a bond or sufficient assets. The birth certificate guarantees that aspect, and while in bankruptcy, you won't have to pay on any of those past debts. Interesting. Your debts will eventually be discharged and the balance of the trust fund is to go into your pocket. It's a win-win situation, and any way you shake it. And the Vatican government and bank lose the trust fund assets they plan to steal from you all along. Note, there is a process to follow to determine your QSIP number, or you can ask a stockbroker friend to help you, or hire a broker on the side to assist you. There are people in the Patriot movement who also know how to apply the formula which converts your birth registration number and or social security number into a QSIP number. I paid to have mine done and discovered that I am worth about 167 million. It's all fiat money, but as long as it can be spent, who cares? Is that all? Man, 22 billion in it and 17. Get hell, I'm a fucking Rothschild. I didn't even know it. Anyway, fucking hell. I hope that this entire expose has enlightened and elevated your personal knowledge and will benefit you now and in the future. Pax vobiscum, peace be with you. Justice and judgment are the habitation of thy throne. Mercy and truth shall go before thy face. Psalms 89:14. Well, there you go. And I mean, I'm probably sure most of you have seen that at some point before. There's a lot of stuff in there that I've come across in bits. So yeah, but, you know, let's focus to last week's foundation. There you go. Now, that's interesting about using your birth certificate in bankruptcy. Interesting, that. I didn't know that. So, I've learned something there. Right, so I'll just... Oh, got grief, you've been chit-chatting. Right, let me see if I can catch up. Yeah, I got that. Right. Right, so you're all chatting amongst yourself, okay. Yeah, okay. You're definitely correct there, mate. Also, if I say you're leaving, just say good night. Oh, God. We used to have some trouble with you, Dorman. I'll tell you when we were youngins. Flaming. Oh, my God, I'm not even talking. My old man were a bloody doorman. He used to run doors, and we used to fight him in the 80s. Well, they were weird, because all of a sudden, you were going out in pubs, and then all of a sudden, there were these guys on with suits on telling you what crack were. You'd be like, you what? We're not having that. No. But, yeah, there we go. I've been forgiven, I think. Right, where? Okay. My girls will respect a lady, says AMG. You still haven't told me that safe word. I don't really want the safe word, do I? I'm going to come down there. Anyway, never mind that. Right. My mate married one. Wonders why he's skint. Oh, dear me, I don't know. Meeting of the minds. When dealing with sales reps, all caps, he's contracted with the corporation. Chicago Manual of Styles, yep. Page 6656 of said manual, yep. I think I've got it on website. As King Quest on. I audio record every interaction you've got to do. Anthony says voluntary servitude replaces slavery word with yeah. You know what they say about happy slave. Jerry has a happy wife, blah blah blah. Certainly, Jerry, that have any non-perceived knowledge of voluntary co-acting as the same. I agree, yeah. Durex? Did they still make Durex? My God. Well, I have a report on my website that makes a claim that all the STDs are actually in the gel on these condoms. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. It's all entertainment. Get your mind out of the gutter. Too much paperwork. Right. Your buttons. Oh, look. Nearly 2 hours there, my God. So there's some interesting data in that. Let's be honest. Especially when we referenced last week's. Right, chaps and chappesses. Thanks for joining. Nights. Thanks for nighting. And let's keep our eyes out for the next version of the shitbag to come as creeping back to call people's names. And yeah, get rid. So, chaps, thanks for joining. Thanks, everybody. And I'll see you. I can find it. Till the next time.
Okay.